Welcome to Read Your Comics. Today I'm going to look at The Art of John Romita. This is a nice little hardcover book that came out in 1996. It's not big like an artist edition. That was before they started doing those things. And it is produced by Marvel. Inside the dust jacket, really cool, embossed with some kind of bronze, what do you call that? Engraving. Basically, this entire book is just a long interview. Of course, it has an introduction by Stan Lee. But the rest of the book is an extensive interview, career spanning, with John Romita. And along the way, it talks about everything from his classical training to his early romance comics, his commercial illustration, and of course, into the Marvel age. It's a nice self-portrait. So here's some of his commercial work. Little Santa Claus he did. Some military propaganda, recruitment stuff. And I've read this book. I actually read this last year. I posted it on Instagram, and I read through the book then, and I read it when it came out. So as I remember what's in here, I'm going to talk about it as we go along. I love the stuff like this that shows the beginning, like here's a good rough of what would become this, is a little bit more laid out, and finally like a painted version. This is one of his first stories that he did for Marvel. It, from Strange Tales number 4 in December 1951. If I recall, yep, it actually reprints the whole story. Kind of small, but pretty clear. And it looks like it's been recolored, and you know, I've seen worse recolors, but it's a pretty bright recoloring. But it's nice and clear on this paper. They at least tried to do some stuff that wasn't just a straight, you know, paint bucket full color drops in there. It's an interesting question. Your parents had nothing against comic books? No, never got any flack from my parents. I was such a responsible kid. I was always very well behaved. I always did what I was supposed to. And in whatever spare time I had, I would draw, so they never objected to it. The Blind Saucer, another early example of John's work. Oh, I think okay. So here he talks about how he actually did some ghosting work for Marvel when it was still timely. And they asked what did Stan say when he finally found out about you doing work for him on the sly. I told Stan I'd ghosted pencils for him for months, and he never batted an eyelash. He surprised me by giving me a script and told me to ink it as well as pencil it. I told him I hadn't inked anything before, and I got the job anyway. That was a 4-page job about an alien that comes to Earth in the form of a baby and pushes his parents down a flight of steps. Wonderful story. The story was called It. That's the first job I did under my name, at least for Stan. The last scene was the baby in the arms of his new foster parents, and they were next, you know. So there's that. Kind of looks like an old man face on that baby. So here he's asked if he was penciling and inking at Timely. He said, yeah, he pretty much did both the inking and the penciling, or the penciling and the inking when he was at Timely. But for Stan, I was penciling and inking. I don't remember anybody inking me for Stan. He was not splitting up the jobs then. So this is more like in the 50s though, probably before Kirby even came back. Yep. What sort of material were you working on during this time? Between 53 and 54, I did a lot of war stories. I think I did some romance and a lot of westerns. Then Stan tried to revive 3 of the superhero characters, Captain America, the Human Torch, and Submariner. They had been out of production for maybe 4 or 5 years. So you did those characters. I worked on Captain America. Somebody else had started it, actually. All 3 of them first appeared in short stories in a book called Young Men. I think I did the 2nd, the 3rd, and 4th Captain America. There. The original sketch of Captain America 77 cover from 1954. And the cover. I think that was the last panel of the last issue of Captain America. And this is the stuff I really love in this book. The interview is great. It's very thorough. Even here he's talking about Martin Goodman's policy at Timely. But it's stuff like this, these kind of images, there were these rough sketches and stuff, just to see his process. I just find that stuff truly fascinating. A romance cover sketch from early 70s. These 1991 Marvel cards. And for me, this was probably some of the earliest stuff that I actually saw from Romita, because when I got into comics, he had already kind of moved out of doing any kind of monthly stuff. He probably inked some things and changed some things here and there, but like to see this kind of artwork was probably some of the first stuff that I actually was paying attention. Now, he would define Spider-Man and the merchandise you would see Spider-Man throughout my childhood. I did not know that, of course, until much later on. But, anytime there was like bed sheets or t-shirts, sleeping bags, pillows, lunch boxes, all of that stuff had Romita's Spider-Man on it. So like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends cartoon that, I was kind of my first introduction to Spider-Man, really. It was based off of Spider-Man's designs. Like Peter Parker looked like Spider-Man from the Romita era. It's a cool FF sketch. I wonder what that was for. Unused cover sketch for Fantastic Four in 1980. John inks Kirby's pencils upon his return to Marvel in 1965. Upon John's return. Now, I had that issue. Daredevil issue. Which he does over Kirby layouts. So Kirby laid this out, but it has that fine ink line quality of Romita. It's a great Daredevil sketch. Were you offered any of the Marvel heroes? Were you offered any of the superhero material of the time? Never. When the time came that ran out of work, they said they had a big inventory. It must have finally hurt them, and that they weren't selling any books at all. So they stopped giving work to everybody. Maybe 1 or 2 guys continued. I think they just stopped producing and used reprints for a while. So he's talking about an era in the 50s. Stan Lee actually stockpiled a bunch of work. He would hire out these artists to do these stories, and he had a trove of them. But then Martin Goodman found out about them and basically said, don't commission any more work. Use what you have, as a cost-saving way at the time. Because comics were, they were on the verge of extinction there for a while. Got a good design right there. So now we're getting Spider-Man pages, but we're not really to Spider-Man yet in this interview. So they're really just kind of filling this book out with some stuff. What was it like shifting from the DC method to the Marvel method? When Stan first told me how we were going to work, I thought he was crazy. Working from the general plot sounded impossible. I did have a little experience with making minor adjustments in stories, but I never did the whole story from start to finish. Stan assured me, yes, you will get it. I know what you can do, and I remember what you did with dull scripts, turning them into interesting stories. But I had no confidence. I said, I don't believe I can live through this. I think you're crazy. What he said was, just try it. And it was traumatic. In fact, that's why Jack Kirby had to break down those two Daredevil stories, because I felt like I didn't know how to pace it. After that experience of the first 2 or 3 pages, I realized I was going to pace it in a dull manner. So Jack did get me out of that. But I still thought that this was a very hard way to make a living. Frankly, down through the years, there was so many times when I would grumble all through the night, struggling to break down a story and tell it interestingly with my fantasism for reality. Stan and Ditko would do things like have Peter Parker become Spider-Man and go across town. In other words, he changes his clothes, leaves them either behind his house or in an ash can somewhere. He goes across town, maybe miles away, and he goes on a rooftop. He goes down the building and becomes Peter Parker. And I would say, Stan, where the hell did he get his clothes? Oh, you're too worried about those things, he'd say. You're too technical. I could not rest with that. I devised the dumb web sack that he has on his back to keep my sanity. That's pretty funny. Now, somewhere in here he talks about when he took over Spider-Man and how he thought Ditko was going to come back. Did you eventually settle down to the Marvel style of working? Oh yeah, the plotting came a bit easier after a while. It was more doable as I went on, but it was never easy for me. It was like pulling my insides out. What about the other artists in the bullpen? Did they take to it? Some guys did. John Buscema was a natural. You could just give him a quick storyline over the phone and off he would go, protesting all the way, saying, comics are dumb. There are too many characters. He used to hate Spider-Man. During the period that I stopped doing Spider-Man, I used to co-plot the story with Stan and call up the artist, whether it was Gil Kane or John Buscema or whoever. I would call up John Buscema and I'd give him a quick outline and characters, say the schemer and the kingpin, and then he'd say, "We're not going to do one of those. We're not going to do one of those, are we? I hate Spider-Man." That was the line. Oh, we got to do another Spider-Man? I hate that book. I hate that character. So that's pretty funny. I didn't know John Buscema hated Spider-Man. So it says, initially you started with full pencils of Spider-Man, but then you moved to breakdowns. Stan kept hoping I could do more, kept trying to find a way to get more out of me. So Stan really wanted Romita to be the next Jack Kirby, I think. Because, Jack would do a little bit of everything on every book, and Stan must have had a lot of confidence in John Romita to do that. Interesting piece for the New York Times Magazine, April 16th, 1972. I actually like Romita's FF work. He does pretty good. He picked up after Kirby pretty well. What was your reaction when Kirby left Marvel? That was traumatic to me. That was about 71. I remember when the news came out. I went to Stan to ask him who was going to do Fantastic Four, because that was the main title. Actually, it wasn't our #1 book anymore. I think Spider-Man had surpassed it by then, but I thought Fantastic Four was still our flagship title. I didn't think of Spider-Man as our main book. I personally thought he would say, we're just going to end the series because, in my estimation, there was nobody else who could do it. And Stan said, "You're going to do it." And I said, "You're out of your mind. First of all, I can't do it. I don't think that way. Second of all, who's going to do Spider-Man?" He said, "Don't worry about Spider-Man. We'll get someone else on Spider-Man. But you're going to do Fantastic Four." I had absolute misgivings about it because here I was figuring we would discontinue the book. How was I ever going to do it? So what I did was surround myself with Jack Kirby's books, and I just swiped cold from them. I tried again like I did with Spider-Man just to keep the look of it. If you look at those 4 issues I did, they were absolutely Kirby shots. If there's any Romita in there, it's because it was unavoidable. It's because I couldn't find a swipe to fit the shot. I actually ended up with more of me than I thought, but in my view, I might as well have been cutting out all of Kirby's drawings and pasting them up in sequence to tell a story the way I wanted. I find that interesting because I've actually been reading some of those with my kids, and they are very Kirby-esque. You can see like the soft lines and stuff and edges of the Romita stuff, and he would do little things like have like a finger breaking, like Mr. Fantastic's finger like breaking the panel. That's not something Kirby would normally do, but they are very Kirby-esque. And I thought maybe he was doing that because he was asked to, but he probably felt like he had to. But they are really good. I actually like his FF right after Kirby leaves. And then, of course, John Buscema comes on and does a bang-up job, too. Oh, this is nice. I actually have a big print of this. So I guess this is his original pencils, and then Alex Ross would use this to paint it. And the perspective on it is pretty awesome. But I have a big print of that signed by Romita and Alex Ross. So it shows, John Romita designed the Spider-Man balloon that went in the Macy's Day Parade. All this like color sample stuff. The Electric Company Spidey book. So here's some cool breakdowns of the Spider-Man news strip. So this is one of the first stories with Dr. Doom, and it's just neat to see his process there. Lay it out, get it kind of the way you want it, and then the finished product. Oh, look what I have in here. This is a ticket to the first Spider-Man movie. I don't know if that was the first showing that I ever went to. $7 for a ticket. 10:45 p.m. Pretty interesting. It's a good piece. Another round of cards. Black Widow redesign costume from Spider-Man 86. Gave her that cat suit, but that's pretty much how she would look from that point forward. Yeah, that's Senior inking Junior. More cards. That's a good Marvel Age. I have to track that one down. This is a good section with the character designs. Now, I always point to Romita when the discussion comes up about Kirby and trying to take all the credit away from Stan. I give Kirby most of the credit, but you look at this era with Romita and Stan together, and they came up with some good stuff too. So, of course, Stan had no part in these, and these were probably more of a function of like the whole editor staff getting together. Like, let's come up with this character, and he would hash out the initial concepts and designs of both Punisher and Wolverine. I like the way the skull kind of goes up like behind his head there. That's pretty neat. That didn't translate into the finished product. That is a neat version. And of course, as women, it was always the way he did the eyes. Just like really soaked you in. This is funny because he's doing the hair like the McFarlane curly hair on her. Your Brother Voodoo Bullseye. Got Hobgoblin design. Really cool Prowler. Kind of Black Panther-ish right there. Yep. The character was conceived by John's son, John Romita Jr. I do remember hearing that. I've heard that story before. I may have heard that story in this book first, actually. I keep forgetting how old this is. So you've got Robbie character designs, Captain Stacy. And then we've got a reprint of a full issue of Spider-Man. This is 109. This up here basically says that he picked this issue to reprint in this book because it was his personal favorite. And it's been recolored in a different way than the standard reprints. I mean, you can tell they used a little bit of the computer coloring. I kind of like it. It's almost too much. But I like it better than the paint bucket drops, though. I think it helps having this like yellowish behind it too, though. But it looks pretty good on like these shots of Spider-Man, just adding just a little bit of shadow. Adds a little bit of depth, but not too much. They don't go too overboard. This is the 90s, though, so they're still learning how to use this computer coloring. Doctor Strange story. I didn't take the time to reread this right now because I'm just kind of reacting to the news of his passing. So I pulled this book out to make a quick and dirty video. And there's the rough sketch of the cover image. That's pretty much it for this book. Definitely a good one to have. There are artist editions of his work out there that may be a little bit better as far as like getting to see his process stuff. The interview is definitely worth it. And that's all I got for now. And we lost a good one, but his legacy will live on. Read your comics.